Every abandoned place has a story. Factories, schools, theaters, and entire communities that once thrived now sit empty. Let's see what time has changed and what it took with it. Please check out the original websites in the description. This dining hall belonged to the massive Orlando Sun Resort in Florida. After the resort closed in 2010, the once busy space was left abandoned. Packard Plant South in Detroit once housed warehouses, truck facilities, and a power plant. Today, the sprawling industrial complex sits abandoned. The Pine Grove Hotel once welcomed visitors to New York's countryside. Flash floods damaged the property, leaving the historic hotel in ruins. Mineral Wells High School in Texas served students for decades after opening around 1915. An arson fire destroyed the historic structure, leading to demolition plans. This indoor fountain once greeted guests at Orlando's famous resort. After the property's final closure, the grand lobby was left abandoned and deteriorating. Rite Aid once operated more than 2,000 pharmacies across America. After repeated bankruptcies and closures, the chain disappeared completely by October 2025. Metropolis, Nevada, was once planned as a thriving agricultural community. Today, the abandoned school ruins are among the ghost town's most recognizable landmarks. This Packard assembly line bridge once carried vehicles over Detroit's Grand Boulevard. Today, the abandoned structure is badly damaged and unsafe. This Burger King in Detroit, Michigan, once welcomed daily customers. Now the restaurant sits empty, abandoned, and slowly falling into disrepair. Monitor Elementary School in Coal Grove, Ohio, opened in 1905 and closed in 1995. The former school building has sat abandoned ever since. Detroit Fire Engine Company 22 served the city for decades before closing in 1982. The historic station remains vacant after years of abandonment. Packard Plant North in Detroit once housed dozens of industrial tenants after Packard closed. Vacant since 1999, the site is now abandoned and overgrown. This outdoor pool was once a centerpiece of Orlando's sprawling resort complex. Since the property's closure in 2010, it has sat empty and neglected. Dungeness Mansion on Cumberland Island was once a grand estate overlooking the coast. Today, only haunting ruins remain among the overgrown grounds. Halcyon Hall in Millbrook, New York, opened in 1893 as a luxury hotel. After decades of abandonment and decay, it was demolished in 2021. This Detroit, Michigan home was once occupied and well maintained. Today, the property stands abandoned as another casualty of neighborhood decline. The Packard Motor Car Company factory in Detroit once produced luxury automobiles. After the company's collapse, the massive complex became an abandoned ruin. Elda Castle in Ossining, New York was built in 1927 by Abercrombie & Fitch founder David Abercrombie. Abandoned for years, it suffered vandalism and decay. This Detroit factory first produced Aerocar automobiles before becoming an early Hudson plant. Today, the abandoned building is covered in graffiti and decay. Detroit's Grande Ballroom hosted legendary concerts for decades before closing in 1972. The once famous music venue now sits abandoned. This abandoned corner store in Gary, Indiana still displays signs advertising food stamps and cigarettes. The building has sat vacant since the early 2000s. Arrowhead Cafe in Hartford, Connecticut, was built in the late 1800s and served customers for generations. After closing in 2011, the building was abandoned. This Futuro house in Royce City, Texas, is one of the rare flying saucer-shaped homes built in the 1960s. The unusual structure now sits abandoned. This shop in Catlettsburg, Kentucky, was known for its large American flag mural. Severe weather caused a partial collapse of the building in 2023. Detroit's University Club was once a gathering place for the city's elite. After years of neglect and a 2013 fire, it was demolished. California's 16th Street Station opened in 1912 as a major railroad hub. After decades of decline and earthquake damage, it was abandoned before restoration. Riverside Hospital on North Brother Island treated infectious disease patients for decades. Today, the abandoned ruins are hidden beneath thick vegetation. Michigan Central Station was once Detroit's Grand Railroad gateway. Decades of abandonment left the station badly deteriorated before restoration began. These two Detroit, Michigan homes tell different stories of decline. One has disappeared entirely, while the other remains abandoned and badly deteriorated. Eleanor Roosevelt School in Warm Springs, Georgia, operated from 1938 to 2013. The abandoned building now sits boarded up with bricked-over windows. The Packard plant in Detroit expanded rapidly during the auto boom. Today, entire rows of factory buildings sit abandoned and heavily deteriorated. St. Agnes Catholic Church in Detroit closed in 2006 as membership declined. Years of neglect have left the once grand sanctuary badly deteriorated. A family once sat on the porch of this Jackson, Mississippi home. Just over a decade later, the house stands abandoned and covered with boards. Chuck E. Cheese became famous for pizza, arcade games, and animatronic shows. Financial struggles led to the closure of dozens of locations across the country. Wisner-Pilger Middle School in Nebraska stood before a powerful tornado struck in 2014. The damaged building was later abandoned following the disaster. This luxury hotel room once hosted tourists visiting Orlando's attractions. Following the resort's 2010 closure, the room was left vacant and decaying. The Coyle Theater in Charleroi, Pennsylvania, once hosted movies and live entertainment. Today, the historic theater sits abandoned and slowly deteriorating. Macedonia Free Will Baptist Church in Philadelphia once served a local congregation. The church now stands abandoned after years of vacancy and neglect. Letchworth Village in New York once housed thousands of residents. The abandoned complex now stands empty, attracting photographers and urban explorers. The Del Mar train station in Iowa once served passing freight and passenger trains. Today, the depot stands abandoned and heavily deteriorated. Wyckoff Villa in New York's Thousand Islands was built in 1894 for typewriter magnate William Wyckoff. The mansion has sat abandoned for decades. Bannerman Castle on New York's Pullapel Island was built in 1900 as a munitions warehouse. An explosion in 1920 damaged it, and it was abandoned by 1950. This Chuck E. Cheese in Monrovia, California, closed during the company's 2020 bankruptcy restructuring. By 2026, the building had become a Five Below store. This Troy, Alabama home once had residents relaxing outside on the porch. After severe fire damage and years of neglect, it was demolished by 2026. This Jackson, Mississippi neighborhood looked active and occupied in 2014. Today, many buildings sit abandoned with locked doors and little sign of activity. This home in Racine, Wisconsin appeared normal before a devastating house fire. Today, the heavily damaged structure stands as a burned and abandoned shell. This corner store in Detroit, Michigan, once served the surrounding neighborhood. Today, the building sits vacant and abandoned, with no active business inside. Detroit Gear and Axle Plant employed thousands of auto workers during its peak years. The factory closed in 2012 and now stands abandoned. The Google Maps car photographed a family outside this Jackson, Mississippi home. Today, the property sits abandoned, boarded up, and surrounded by trash. This racetrack in Charlotte, North Carolina, once hosted racing events and spectators. Today, the facility sits abandoned and deteriorating. These Mississippi homes were destroyed by fire years ago. The burned remains still stand today, slowly deteriorating with each passing year. Detroit's historic Pole Town was once home to over 40,000 Polish immigrants. Today, many buildings near St. Albertus Church sit abandoned. This farmhouse in Pittsburgh, New Hampshire was built around 1850. Once a family home, it now stands abandoned and weathered by time. This Akron, Ohio home became the scene of a deadly 2016 arson fire that killed 2 people. The house was later demolished after a neighbor was convicted in a series of murders. Club Supersex operated in Montreal for nearly 40 years before closing in 2017. A major fire destroyed the abandoned building in 2021 in a suspected arson case. Detroit's former DeSoto plant produced Chrysler vehicles and automotive glass for decades. The factory was demolished in 2011 after years of decline. This Rainforest Cafe in Chicago, Illinois closed and sat vacant for years. Plans to convert it into a dispensary failed, leaving the building abandoned. Providence National Bank once stood as a landmark financial building. Closed long ago, the historic structure remained abandoned by 2022. Great Plain Union Chapel in Danbury, Connecticut, once served a rural community. The historic church now sits abandoned and deteriorating. The Google Maps car captured people outside this Memphis, Tennessee home in 2020. By 2026, the house had been demolished and the lot left completely empty. Basketball Lanes in Laverne, Alabama was a family entertainment center owned by former NBA player Wesley Person. After closing in 2013, the building has remained abandoned.